If you're an aspiring actor or voice actor like me, you want to learn everything about the craft. Now, in these videos, I'd like to dive deeper into important themes I find in books or coaching sessions. Let's get started with today's topic, imagination. How do we use it as actors or voice actors? First off, I'd like to read the passage from the book An Actor Prepares, which inspired this video. "Let us make an imaginary moving picture," said the director as he came into class today. "I am going to choose a passive theme because it will necessitate more work. At this point, I am not so much interested in the action itself as in the approach to it. That is why I suggest that you, Paul, are living the life of a tree." "Good," said Paul with decision. "I am an age-old oak. However, even though I have said it, I don't really believe it." "In that case," said the director, "why don't you say to yourself, 'I am I, but if I were an old oak, set in certain surrounding conditions, what would I do?' And decide where you are, in a forest, in a meadow, on a mountaintop, in whatever place affects you the most." Paul knit his brows and finally decided that he was standing in an upland meadow near the Alps. To the left, there is a castle on a height. "What do you see near you?" asked the director. "On myself, I see a thick covering of leaves which rustle." "They do indeed," agreed the director. "Up there, the wind must often be strong. In my branches," continued Paul, "I see some birds' nests." The director then pushed him to describe every detail of his imaginary existence as an oak tree. When Leo's turn came, he made the most ordinary, uninspired choice. He said he was a cottage in a garden in the park. "What do you see?" asked the director. "The park," was the answer. "But you cannot see the whole park at once. You must decide on some one definite spot. What is there right in front of you?" "A fence." "What kind of fence?" Leo was silent, so the director went on. "What is this fence made out of? What material?" "Cast iron." "Describe it. What is the design?" Leo drew his finger around on the table for a long time. It was evident that he had not thought out what he had said. "I don't understand. You must describe it more clearly." Obviously, Leo was making no effort to rouse his own imagination. "I wondered of what use such passive thinking could possibly be, so I asked the director about it. In my method of putting a student's imagination to work," he explained, "there are certain points which should be noted. If his imagination is inactive, I ask him some simple question. He will have to answer, since he has been addressed. If he responds thoughtlessly, I do not accept his answer. Then, in order to give a more satisfactory answer, he must either rouse his imagination or else approach the subject through his mind by means of logical reasoning. Work on the imagination is often prepared and directed in this conscious, intellectual manner. The student sees something, either in his memory or in his imagination. Certain definite visual images are before him. For a brief moment, he lives in a dream. After that, another question, and the process is repeated. So with a third and a fourth, until I have sustained and lengthened that brief moment into something approaching a whole picture. Perhaps, at first, this is not interesting. The valuable part about it is that the illusion has been woven together out of the student's own inner images. Once this is accomplished, he can repeat it once or twice or many times. The more often he recalls it, the more deeply it will be printed in his memory, and the more deeply he will live into it. Now, what's the takeaway that Stanislavski wanted from this? He pressed the importance of imagination in acting, because to act, you have to believe you are the character. To shorten the rest of this chapter on imagination, if you make a believable world where the character would live in, down to the smallest details, it is a lot easier to believe that you have truly become the character, and hence make your performance more believable. Now, let's put that lesson into practice, shall we? First, I asked you guys for your scenarios of if I were a tree, without giving the circumstances, of course. Now, let's see what you came up with without any direction. If I were a tree, I would be a tree. So this one, funny, not gonna lie. But as for, the whole imagination part, no. It gets an F for funny. I have no man. I just don't know the type of tree. If I was a tree, I will live in, Japan, because they love trees and nature, and I will water me and feed me. Luca's small child, but they didn't know that it was me. Interesting. We're starting to get somewhere with the imagination part. I would put this as a solid C baseline. If I were a tree, I would be chopped down after being there for 1,500 years because McDonald's needed to open a new location. Now this one's funny as well. I like it. It gets a B because you're imagining a story. Not that many details. Actually, no. C as well. C because it doesn't have details. It has a story. We're starting to get a story there, but, you know, not exactly perfect. I would be a big old willow tree in the middle of a forest next to a lake. My branches would sway in the wind, and people might visit the camp, have a picnic, or maybe fish every once in a while. Now this one's good. This one has details and a story. I would put it as a solid A tier. Very, very solid. Beautiful story, sort of. Not really super fleshed out, but it's there. And also the details of the tree itself. Awesome. Cool. Now, on to the last one. I'm a tree in the Sahara Desert. Before all the heat, I was a flourishing pine tree. Then came the meteorite. All I saw was black for months, until one of my seeds had sprouted. My consciousness had been transferred into the sapling. When I woke up, it was depressing and sad, and I had nowhere to grow. I then slowly but surely faded away and died. Honestly, nice. It has a story. Not that many details, but the story is very fleshed out. I like it. I like it a lot. It is very, very nice. Good job, Indigo. You get a very top of A tier. No S's, but, you know, it's fine. Maybe next time. I also wrote down the idea I had when I stopped at this passage and tried it for myself, which I wholeheartedly recommend doing when reading this book. I'm a young willow by the stream. There's wildlife all around me. Fish swim in the river, birds sing all around, and a deer with her young come by to drink often. One of the young ones came up to me and tried to eat me, but it immediately realized that I'm not a good food source and thankfully left me alone. There was an old willow quite close to me. Not close enough to block the sunlight, but I at least have a friend to wave in the wind with. I grew quite quickly. Nutrients are plentiful in the soil and there's more than enough sunlight. I don't know when, but a couple humans established a village on the other side of the river. They don't use willow wood for their buildings, it seems. I have to say I'm quite thankful for that. A while later, the village grew quite big in size. They started building a bridge across the river, facing my now old willow friend. After they were finished with the bridge, they started making a road, and my friend was directly in the way. They cut him down without mercy. Though my friend would have been targeted by something else quite soon, most likely, even if the humans didn't intervene, so I'm not mad at them. The humans advanced quite rapidly in their technology. The roads and bridge improved at a rapid rate. Soon, there was a massive city spanning the other side of the river. There were quite a couple houses on my side as well. They left me here, thankfully. The wildlife wasn't as abundant as before, but there were still fish in the river and a few critters. A couple squirrels actually made their home right inside my leaves. I was quite old by now. Probably older than my now long-gone friend. Once in a while, a couple kids would come by and take a couple branches of mine to use as swords in epic battles. I quite enjoyed watching them pretend to be in epic battles of the past. After a bit more time, I felt something new enter my bark. It felt wrong. There were bugs eating me. The humans tried to intervene, but I was too old and withered after their incessant attacks to help myself, even with the assistance of these humans. Before they could cut me down, I noticed a couple seedlings next to me, just like I started here. I hope they grow into big and strong willows like me. The humans decided to cut me down. There was no point in keeping me here anyway. I started rotting away because of the damn bugs. Before I go, I just want to wish the other willows good luck. Oh, and also the squirrel family. Sorry I couldn't be your permanent home. I hope you find some other tree to suit your needs and protect you from the predators. Thank you for a wonderful life. Bye. Now that you have the direction from the book and these ideas, I'd like you to post your updated responses here in the comments. Remember, you want to imagine as many details as possible. I'd also like to transfer this idea into your auditioning process as well, because that's what you came here for. Many voice actors imagine the character's personality and their voice, but that's where they stop. Now, that is fundamentally wrong, and I did the same, to be honest, so don't worry. To act as a character, you need not only their personality, but also their circumstances. What kind of world do they live in? Is it the same as ours, or is it a fantasy world? What sort of economic background did they come from? Where did they study? What's their friend group like? Do they have friends? I could go on and on. Now, not every time you'll get that information. So you have two options. If you think you have a good enough grasp on the character and the world, also good enough information from the project, then you can use your fantasy to fill in the gaps. Though for some things, I'd recommend asking the director. Not only does it make a good impression, but it will also fill those gaps with the original ideas from the creator. If you do these things, it'll make your idea of the character and hence your performance much more believable. Now, if you made it this far, I believe I earned a like and subscribe, hopefully. Even if just for more acting or voice acting content. Anyway, I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!